So I'm bringing this up because I'm a Formula One fan. Well, I'm not even sure if this year I'm really a Formula One fan. I'm a racing fan for sure. Formula One helped get me back into it because during COVID, they were still really racing. This year has just been kind of overall meh. There are seasons where some teams are overly dominant, and in those dominant years, there's just not much surprise. And the biggest issue I think with I'm gonna get on my high horse here with the Formula One package is that passing is not easy. So what you get is largely follow the leader or use pit to strategize change. It's actually the same complaint that I have with NASCAR right now. They're trying to make these cars very clever in NASCAR. And what they've done is they've made it so that they can't follow each other. And if you think about what you know about NASCAR, those are traditionally shorter tracks in which they follow really close.
Yeah.
So they built a car that can't follow each other. So now they either wreck or you have to use pit cycles and fuel savings.
But yeah, there's a lot of strategy and cool stuff going on there and alone, but it's certainly not as interesting to watch.
But when you're watching it, it's
like
just cars in circles.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of what
Turn
Formula One has
fast.
become. Yeah. So I find it interesting that with Drive to Survive, a company called Liberty Media, who's also behind like Live Nation and stuff, they're constantly getting sued. It's pretty cool. Owns largely the production rights of Formula One. There's, weirdly enough, the European Union has broken up Formula One. There's a governing body called the FIA, and Formula One, FIA could no longer own Formula One. They had to separate that out. So that's now owned by an American company. And the first thing they did is they created this thing on Netflix called Drive to Survive. They really want American dollars involved in the sport. And so if you've been kind of paying attention, you probably have heard and learned and know quite a bit about Formula One. It's really garnered a lot of interest in the States. Before that, it was pretty much a overseas thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, really I played like games and stuff that had F1 racing in it, obviously.
Of course.
But the first like media that I actually watched that I enjoyed that was F1 was Rush, probably.
That was pretty good, though. That's the story of
2013, probably, or whatever.
Is it Niki Lauda? No, Jim, or is it Hunt?
I forget. It's the guy who gets burned.
That's Lauda.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah.
And James Hunt, and his rivalry, I think, with James Hunt, which is another famous driver.
Yeah. Great story, though. And the guy, the actual guy, advised on it the entire time. So
yeah.
It's all true to form.
He only passed away probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was an advisor for Mercedes for
forever.
Up
probably.
until the last year of his life.
Wow.
Yeah. Crazy.
So they're making a.
So they made a movie. And I will simply say, as a fan, we had to suffer through this frickin' thing because they literally would actually place a fake team in, like they gave them a garage in between two other teams. They are using present drivers. Well, 2024's drivers were kind of included in the action. A lot of footage was digitally redone, but even certain scenes were like they do the formation lap and what have you. They would actually place the car on the grid, and through some clever camera angles, if you were there, you saw the car. But they didn't show it in shot when they were broadcasting the race.
Huh.
So you never actually saw it in a race. They always alluded to them being there, which I do think is clever on their part. Stars Brad Pitt.
Yeah,
it's like returns to this team to help them build their team back up. Could be real interesting, but there's been some serious money and movement behind it. And it's interesting to me because why are we talking about this on a tech podcast? Well, there's some serious money going on with this movie.
Admittedly, I learned about it because of this wallet ad thing. I didn't know it was happening really because I'm not on Apple TV or anything like that, so I don't see like the trailers or anything. So when the people were upset, the iPhone users were upset because they got an Apple Wallet ad push like notification.
I never came across it, which is
really?
crazy to me.
Yeah, I did. I got it. Yeah.
So what? When you would go to pay for something, it would show up, or
no? It's just like a banner notification that just drops down Apple Wallet and it says, hey, get $10 off of Fandango to watch F1.
Well, so Apple is the studio behind this.
Yeah. So
And
is it, people are like, oh, it's a gross overstep, basically, which, I mean, I don't know. It's their whatever. So.
It's not. It's cross-promotion. We've seen that for years.
Yeah.
Is it a bad move? Probably. But look,
It's just the first time they're doing this, and they're going to put ads everywhere, so.
there's a longer term to this. There is very much, I think, a reason why this movie is getting greenlit. Because, one, Formula One is growing massively in the States. So it's becoming a hot commodity. Two, because of that, there's a lot of pressure that the current rights holder that broadcasts in the United States is ESPN. There's a lot of pressure that they want them to pay way more money. And the current rumor is that ESPN is like, no. Because the one thing that I absolutely love about Formula One is there are no commercials in the broadcast. It's all advertisements and everything. They can't cut to commercial. That's part of your license agreement. So,
Well, F1 is notorious for having like luxury brand advertising, and it's all in place.
oh yeah, but those companies don't make the money off of it. So I don't know what you get as a broadcast holder apart from eyeballs.
I mean,
like pre and post shows.
you go with the Red Bull mentality where you don't have ads necessarily. You just have, people drinking it or, mentioning it or whatever, or events, You try not to do that many ads.
Well, Red Bull's whole marketing strategy, right? I know they did some commercials, but they just sort of show up and they become a lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
Because guess who one of the teams is in Formula One?
I'm sure it's Red Bull.
Red Bull has a sizable stake.
Yeah.
But the concept is like, we're here, we're an edgy brand. We're going to come in here. We're disruptors. We're going to show them. We're going to build a team that's successful. And over time, it didn't take them long, probably 3 years. They built a fairly successful team, and they are one of the more successful teams in the modern era. Like you said, they're very lifestyle based. It's very interesting, their marketing story, because they don't advertise a ton.
But that matches really well with what Apple is cool with. So
yeah, this whole thing. So Apple Studios is behind, and I like that because I actually do think for some of these streaming services, Apple spends money ridiculously, but it's beautifully shot. Some things though that I thought were cool is so cameras are big, and it is also, they're bragging about this a lot, but they actually on some of the cars to get some of the angles they wanted. They deconstructed iPhones, but using their components, created cameras that they could strap it, because
iPhone action cams, that's wild.
basically making action cams out of iPhones.
So sort of related, the 28 Years Later movie, completely shot on iPhone.
Really?
They just bought 1,000 iPhones, and they're like, this is the same price as like one Red camera, so let's just go for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Similar, but because I'm sure they use other cameras.
They did use other cameras in this.
Yeah.
There's without a doubt, but
I know that because it's an IMAX movie, I believe. So I think you have to.
You have to use their camera.
Yeah.
Well, the camera for. So I don't know how I feel about this film. I will watch this when it hits Apple TV, but because of the ESPN not thinking about renewing, Prime was streaming NASCAR this year. So the streaming companies are starting to pick up these racing sports as well.
It'd be interesting if Apple does like an Apple Sports like thing. Like, why
and they're
wouldn't
trying?
they?
Well, they did try with soccer, and I think it's fairly successful. But Formula One could be a huge value property for them.
Yeah.
So the rumor is in 2026 they want the rights to broadcast it.
Huh.
So piggyback off of the success of The Drive to Survive from Netflix. Build a movie to keep excitement alive. Broadcast rights next year.
Yeah, that's a pretty good game plan.
It's a pretty good game plan. I think it's pretty genius.
As long as the movie does well.
But it's expensive, right? Yeah. And you said it. This movie still has to do well because it's, I think, a $200 million investment or something like that.
And Brad Pitt is notoriously expensive. So
opening weekend, $57 million.
Oh. Okay.
U.S. That's domestic.
Yeah, just domestic. Yeah.
Worldwide opening weekend, because F1's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Worldwide.
I was gonna say it's actually probably bigger in Europe.
140.
Oh my god.
Which actually, that tells me that's a really big U.S. release. We're really not seeing releases hitting 50 million. this actually ends up looking like it's going to be a big success. Apple's going to make their money back because, well, at the time of recording, the movie had just come out. By the time of this release, it will have had a second weekend, and it sounds like it's going to pay for itself.
That's the goal. Yeah.
And it sounds like, despite it sounds like some of the
they're already halfway or more. So
yeah, it sounds like it was great success. So
yeah.
You know what? There's a lot to talk about on this week's episode of the Lighthouse IT Solutions podcast. We're back again, sitting here, flowing in the theaters. This isn't really a theater, though, is it? You know what? They don't know that. We're broadcasting from the Lighthouse IT Solutions podcast theater.
Theater studio.
And you know what's really crazy? Is that when you hit play, we actually have to come in here. Like, the buffering that you hear is us getting out of our cots, and we're like, oh, somebody hit play again. We come down here, and we come down to the theater, we broadcast the show. We don't say anything new or different.
It's just how it is, though, yeah.
It's a fully scripted show.
Oh.
Nothing is improv on this thing.
This is a scripted awkward silence. Well, then.
Well, goodbye, awkward silence, and goodbye, blue screen of death.
Oh, man. Do you have any sort of nostalgia to blue screen of death? Because she's gone.
I mean, what are we going to do? Oh, that's right. They're just going to make it a black screen of death. Which literally, they're trying to separate themselves.
Yet the acronym's going to be the same.
Right? They really like, we don't like the concept of negativity around the blue screen of death when you get it. Because it's a kernel panic error, right? Like, that's really what it is. We would call it a kernel panic error. But what happened when you got that kernel panic? The screen went completely blue and your computer died. The blue screen of death was just a great error. And the reason it all started was because of plug and play hardware. There you go. There's the history of it. Plug and play in the very beginning in the 90s was very finicky. It wasn't actually so much a Windows issue as it was the concept of plug and play evolving. So blue screens were popular. We always have the BSODs. Microsoft has always been super sensitive to the blue screen of death. So they're finally doing something about it and changing it to a black screen.
Yep.
Which, as you've already geniusly figured out, that doesn't help your marketing department. It's still black. It's the black screen of death.
But they wanted to, convey some sort of different message. And I guess that the black screen does that kind of, maybe? I don't know. But I like it. Why don't
we have it like the blue screen of hope? Like, put a haiku on there. It's still blue screens.
At least black
but
is
it puts like a haiku on the screen.
Dude, if there was a haiku error log, that'd be kind of cool.
I'm looking at you, BOS. I miss you.
But at least black is like synonymous with death. So
we're making it darker.
At least yeah.
Blue is happy.
I think it's funnier because it's darker, so it makes sense to me. But yeah, for some reason they're saying that is a little bit less dark, but obviously black. I don't know. Anyway, the future iterations of Windows 11 will now have this black screen of death. And you're not going to ever really see the blue screen apparently ever again, even in the updates. It's always going to be black.
Yeah, it is part of a major shift, though, and change in a response to the CrowdStrike, which has been almost a year.
Yep.
So a lot of antivirus and security products are able to hook into the kernel. And, that's great because it gives them some very in-depth information and low-level insight into what's happening in the computer. However, if you don't properly test your code, you can break the kernel panic, blue screen,
Thanks,
blah, blah, blah. And CrowdStrike's epic failure last year, where millions of computers and airlines and the world turning off. That was great because if you remember, that was like the first day I had taken off.
Well, luckily
only 2 computers were affected. One of them was mine, in which I was on vacation that day. But this is part of those changes. And what's going to happen is antivirus companies are getting the boot. Everything is going to run in user space now. There's no longer going to be that tight access to the kernel. So as part of that shift, they're finally going to get rid of the BSOD.
Update the screen a little. Change the color.
See a BSOD. Hello.
BSOD.
BSOD.
Yay. Yeah, at least in the acronym world, it won't change.
We would still call it a blue screen of death.
Yeah.
It could be hot pink, and they'd be like, "Why do you call it a blue screen of death?" You're like,
It's like the floppy disk is save button. It's just sorry.
Yeah,
that's the way it is.
Exactly. That's a great metaphor. That's
If
great.
people still know that is. It's wild how many things in technologies, for as fast as technology develops, that it's just the same. Like, why are we using copy paste still? Like, does that still make sense? I guess. Like, I'm not gluing it though, like physically. I don't know. But there's so many of those.
What would you do? Would you just call it cut and duplicate or cut and reinsert?
Yeah. I don't know.
I think they were trying to make it accessible. It was a clipboard. You put your clipboard here. I cut it out. I put it on the clipboard.
But think about it. People have never seen a clipboard in their lives now.
So I was talking to a customer about they have some rules that they have to follow from a cybersecurity standpoint. And literally one of my recommendations to them was to hang a clipboard on the wall.
I mean, yeah.
That was my because it was for access control. But literally I'm like, just hang a clipboard with a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me and I was like,
some things are just easier, like physically.
You get in that room 4 times a year, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to have a proof of when the log. Just hang a piece of paper on the wall.
Yeah.
Like you don't need some digital control system. It's fine.
Yeah. Just right.
Lock the door, and hang a piece of paper on the wall with a pen.
Yeah.
Solutions. What happens if they steal it? Then obviously you were breached.
Yeah, that's a bigger problem. It wasn't you or somebody authorized.
I'm gonna tell you, if they go through the trouble of stealing it, they probably weren't gonna put their name on it anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess that awkward silence was actually a moment of silence for blue screen of death.
I'll miss you, boy.
Have you heard about the PNG file format? It's actually been around for 20 years.
I didn't know it's around for 20 years.
Surprisingly. PNG obviously is a file format with supports like transparency and that kind of thing, and it's good for vector art. But people, have had problems with it for a long time. Interesting thing has happened. People have been developing this PNG format for a long time, and PNG, the file format itself, has got a huge update. But now they've introduced a lot bigger PNG standardization, which is animated PNG.
Ooh.
So now we have officially have a proper replacement for GIFs.
And do you know what the better part of that is?
There won't be confusing naming conventions.
Well, no. I finally can stop hearing people lecture me on whether it's GIF or GIF, because now it's going to be apping.
I mean, there is, I guess, still people saying ping versus PNG. I'm a PNG person, but ping works too. It's the same thing. There's no confusion of whether or not it's pronounced differently. So,
and nobody cares.
That's the beautiful part.
Because I'll tell you what, you find somebody who's on this GIF thing.
Graphics or...
And it's a GIF. It ain't peanut butter.
Yeah.
I put it on my website, not on my toast.
Well, I'm a big fan of this for a few reasons. PNG itself has now got a lot of compression added to it, which is really good. There's a lot of optimization cleanup that they did for this new release. And this, by the way, this new release got rolled out. This was a combined effort of a bunch of people, Chrome, Safari, Photoshop, a bunch like Adobe, Apple, that kind of thing. They have now optimized it to where this new release is way better in terms of compression and whatnot. But they also made it so that APNG is a lot better in terms of optimization as well.
I just need you to tell me that there's HDR support.
There's HDR support, baby.
Yeah, there we go. All right,
using only a mere 4 bytes to make that happen.
Oh man, what
Crazy.
about like the metadata? What about EXIF?
That's actually really cool for me too. So this EXIF data support. So basically, if you take like a photograph with a DSLR or like an iPhone or whatever like that,
put like
the metadata will go in. It'll tell you the f-stop. It'll tell you the model the camera was shot on. It'll tell you a bunch of stuff. That is now in the
what you had for
format.
Breakfast. You don't think these cameras know? They know.
I had GIF.
They know.
Yeah.
I had a
GIF sandwich. Yeah. So those two, along with the fact that now you can do animations within the file format, are massive. The cool part about this is as well, there's no 256 color limitation. Supports millions of colors and transparency. And now we can also, have smaller file sizes for these animations than what we're on GIF. So not only does it have more information actually in it, but it will be smaller because of their great compression. But I mean, it makes sense. We're 20 years after that file format was even made, and probably a lot more than, I don't even know when just normal PNG was made, but that's probably real old. Yeah. So.
I'm old, but I think I'm younger than PNG.
Probably, yeah.
Part of me wants to say like that's a 70s technology. Maybe that's JPEG. Because
JPEG's been around a long
there's also a
time.
new iteration of JPEG around. JPEG XL kind of is getting pushed out to the front.
Ooh, 96, actually.
PNG is only from 96.
So I'm older than PNG. Wow.
It looks it.
That's great.
You don't support transparency.
It's true. Dang. Closed doors.
Why are you so closed off? Transparency wasn't introduced until 1996.
Sorry. Yeah. Long time coming. Pretty exciting, though. This does do some interesting things to some more file formats that have been up and coming, like SVG. But SVG doesn't do animations unless it's like manipulated on a like website and such. But inherently, it doesn't. And then I don't know. There's definitely a better place for SVG in terms of vector graphics than PNG. So I think they still are separate enough to where this makes sense. But pretty cool. I'm excited.
Well, vectors resize because it's all mathematics. They can redraw really well.
All based on points.
Yeah. And so that makes them very small, but also scalable.
But this is really cool, man. Now we got finally an alternative for this stupid GIFs that look awful. Sure, you can put the entire
or
structure down
GIFs if you swing that way.
Or if you swing, no judgment, but also judgment.
You're wrong.
So you want to talk about logos?
Always.
So I deal with a fair bit of logos and whatnot. So this is actually pretty funny for us as Lighthouse. We have an uppercase branded logo, right? The entire thing's uppercase. Sounds like we're shouting it. But there's a few brands that are obviously just fully lowercase or...
Should we switch?
Well, so that's the thing. Research recently has found that uppercase brand names convey competence and authority.
So we definitely need to go to lowercase.
While lowercase are seen as warmer and friendlier. And obviously this will change culturally, but for the most part, North America, these are the values of it. But places where, hierarchical structure kind of matters more, like Japan, India, that kind of thing, those affect it even more so. So it depends on like what you want to do with your brand and whatnot, whether you're in that kind of market and whatnot. But if you're largely just North American, I would stick to those two and whether or not you want to be friendlier or more professional. The uppercase definitely seems to be more professional, but a little colder. And yeah, the other one is more friendly, but potentially less professional. But some brands, you kind of want that. It's interesting to see like Adidas being fully lowercase, but that makes sense. You want to be more approachable in that sense. You don't really care about professionalism. What is the shoe brand? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in this survey, they called out Gucci specifically because it's like, yeah, we want to be, the most premium, that kind of thing.
There is a hierarchy there.
Yeah. So uppercase.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
Louis Vuitton is kind of the same way. I believe that's all uppercase.
I think so, yeah. Hard to think about, like, I almost find that uppercase seems to be easier to remember for me, though. I'm trying to think of more lowercase only brands, but...
Well, they're definitely out there.
I know, right? But I don't want to Google it as a cheat. But yeah, it's odd. I mean, again, the other alternative is just to have grammatically correct looking, one uppercase at the top.
So if you're redoing the Lighthouse logo, would we go lowercase? Because that makes it approachable, and technology is often very... Or do you go professional?
That's the thing,
establish higher. That's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Because it shows authority.
Yep. I mean, Momentum is all lowercase, I guess.
Is.
So...
Well, you're right.
Navigate is as well. And Harmony's just normal.
Yeah. I bet you did it because the logo was capitalization, and you probably like the juxtaposition of all caps and lower caps.
That's how the website was forever. And still might be, to be honest, with titles being lowercase while everything else is grammatically good because our logo is fully uppercase.
Yeah.
Juxtaposition.
Make the site approachable even though the logo's...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, that's the other thing. You can spin it and make it, look well like that, especially if your tagline is all lowercase or something. Well, I got a few AI things I do want to talk about. I think this is probably the most exciting AI news that's been around a little bit. And it's kind of saturated right now with AI news, but that's mostly just people investing or raising money or buying or, looking at the future, that kind of thing. But this is like something that's happened right now. So Cloudflare, the little guy, Cloudflare.
The little guy. From Final Fantasy VII, right?
Yeah, Cloud, yeah. They're testing and are releasing a pay-per-crawl model or tool that people can sign up for. And this is basically putting a price on content for when AI crawlers are coming to your content and requesting a crawl, or rather just doing it. There should be, because Cloudflare can deny the access, there should be a way where the AI crawler can go in, see the content's there, request it, potentially pay an amount that maybe the creator can set, and then they gain access and are able to use it for whatever the AR crawler was there to use.
This solves a major problem that we've talked about for months.
Yep. It is pretty fascinating. It could be something that is, messed with for sure. So there's definitely some cons that we may not even know about yet, but largely, I think, pros.
Yeah, I mean, somebody could abuse it and want more money than something's worth. But then again, it's their content. If it has value to it, then you should have to pay.
Yeah. For the most part, I'm pretty happy about this. And I think the industry agrees.
Yeah, because it also keeps the LLMs, when they're training their models, it keeps you out of their training data and basically no longer being able to,
Yeah.
Look at how search works. Search is largely AI based now. You search for something.
Oh boy, we're going to get to that in a moment.
You get somewhere to there, and I don't even click on the page anymore half the time.
Yeah, it's a sad thing. For a little while, we were seeing a lot more people actually clicking the citations of the AI and interacting with the homepage.
And now they're not. There's a comfort.
They sort of are, but the bounce rate has risen in a huge amount. So even if they go to the homepage, it's more like, are you checking to see if this is a reputable thing? And you're like, I'm going to look for a moment. Okay, cool, it is. I'm going to go back to the AI.
I have had AI link me to the wrong article.
Really, man?
Yeah, it's really insane.
It still hallucinates like crazy. Yeah. It's wild where it's at right now because I'm still impressed, but also very disappointed often. And it's crazy the amount of money people are raising for this stuff. But it's, it's the future. People are just trying to prepare. So yeah, like we said, publishers will decide on what bots pay, who gets in free versus who they want to completely block. There's a lot of different options that the content creator or the manager can, mess with and say, I want to do this or that. And for the most part, it's kind of a good foolproof system since Cloudflare itself is just going to deny it. It's not like somebody can go in and be a different bot and then be like, I'm going to act like I'm from a different thing. I'm not actually Google, but I'm clearly a Google bot or something. So Cloudflare should be able to identify and manage the entire stuff in the back end. We'll see. Could drastically change how AI crawlers work and, what's actually being available on the web and who's actually paying for what. Because right now it's Wild West.
Yeah. Well, they're making money off of our data, our expertise, our knowledge.
So that's assuming that people are, that humans are the target of these AI, though. AI is trying to learn from humans and, humans are trying to use AI, right? What if Google has released a new advertising model that they're literally calling Agent2Agent, where it targets
start
bots
marketing to AI
instead of humans?
We're already being replaced. This thing has been around for what? AI has
4 years.
Yeah, AI has been market feasible for 4 years.
Yeah.
And already we're being replaced.
This is the infancy of AI still, though. Some of this is the next big stuff. Google's reimagining search engine advertising to cater to AI agents instead of human consumers. And what that means is the protocol allows bots to interact and conduct tasks like, financial transactions autonomously and all that jazz, making a weird ecosystem where AI is playing the consumer role. So, okay, let's advertise to those AI consumers. Strange. Super strange. But it does make sense if people are using AI for tasks and whatnot. You have to advertise to those AI bots that are doing the tasks. It's a crazy weird thing to think about, but it does technically make sense in how this is functioning. So
it just
kind of sucks.
What kind of bias is that going to create if you're advertising to AI bots?
Yeah. I'm also worried about the phenomena of runaway AI hallucination, basically, where it's like an echo chamber of hallucinations that are compounding upon each other.
Because we are seeing agent-based AIs becoming the next big thing, as well as context aware, like context engineering over prompt engineering. The concept of a situation or environmental context being defined instead of just relying solely on prompt engineering. So I see where this kind of comes in. If the bots are able to do things on behalf of the customers, then you do need to incentivize the AI.
Yeah.
But then that's just that creates a new bias.
It's weird. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's certainly happening.
You know what's not happening? I got asked this question the other day. It was like, I saw you guys didn't talk about this giant password breach that happened, and what are your thoughts and everything. And it was kind of funny because part of my job is to stay up on these breaches, right?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything of it. So they start telling me, and I go, interesting. Well, actually, it's because, this is what happens when we have the modern news cycle. So let's talk about the story as it is, and then let me explain why we didn't talk about it and why I think it's important that we talk about it now. The story a couple weeks back was that 16 billion passwords were leaked in a data breach. The media everywhere latched onto this story by a website called Cyber News, and this researcher showing some screenshots of these massive databases. To be fair, it was 3 screenshots, which doesn't necessarily identify 16 billion records, but let's just call that red flag number 1.
It's an unfathomable amount of
database
data.
dump, by the way, is actually red flag number 1. This 3 screenshots would be red flag number 2. Well, let's talk about it included 16 billion credentials, including accounts from Apple, Microsoft, Google, as well as others. And if accurate, it would be the biggest breach in history, because that's what we're constantly going for.
I mean, last year's was, though, legitimately.
National Public Records was legitimately...
That was horrible.
That was a bad one.
Yeah. But this one seems to be simply a
This is
combination of old leaks.
That's exactly it. So we talk about red flags on this. The report by Cyber News actually started getting side-eyed from other research firms. This is why we're not going to try to downplay things. There are certain organizations that we trust for our security data, and a lot of them weren't legitimizing this yet. And it's because exactly what you said was it was so few screenshots, there was so few data, and there wasn't really any proof. And as it turns out, that's because the 16 billion password breach isn't what we think it is. It was not a breach at all. The best way to describe this is, as breaches happen that include passwords, that data gets dumped into a file, and then those dumps will get resold on the dark web into collections of other dumps. So what you're looking at is potentially 20 years of password credentials that have been rolled into a single dump file.
Yeah, which explains the ludicrous
with some
amount.
new ones sprinkled in for good measure.
Yeah.
Like there's probably some new passwords, but realistically, this is not 16 billion new records. This is probably 15.9 billion old records.
Yeah, I can see the Craigslist listing now.
Exactly.
Do you want the past 20 years of large breaches?
And even the guy admitted that this was a culmination of over 30 different database dumps.
Wow. Which are probably big ones and whatnot, but they're probably ones we already know about.
And how many of them are duplicate within the database?
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't see any of that. We know there's 16 billion of those. So after putting pressure, the guy who, quote, discovered it admits, this was cumulative records that ended up, it was 30 different databases and logs, and most of which the data isn't even currently applicable. It wouldn't be considered applicable.
20 years, yeah. That's,
you know what I mean? And it highlights a problem that I have with cybersecurity marketing.
Fear-mongering.
My job as an IT professional is to help businesses do what's fair and help them protect themselves. But I have to balance that. I have to balance that and sort of keep in check that we're not ever using fear-mongering. Unfortunately, because we're trying to protect against the unseen, fear is a very useful tactic to say, look, here's the deal. You could lose everything. And I will say those words because those are an actual reality, that there are situations you could lose everything. But you have to play this line. Unfortunately, what we have with cybersecurity's primary tactic for marketing, all of these companies, when they are advertising me to pick up their product, they all tell me that if I don't buy their product, I'm ruining their clients. Their clients are all going to close. They all push this fear agenda. And that's what's happening here is we've got this agency that is using fear to push cybersecurity products. And it's so difficult because I know that there are clients out there that are listening to us that go, man, we just don't know. There's a budget. There's an end to budget, right? And we get it. when we're trying to do what we can and we're trying to give them the most features that they can to protect their business. And it's our job to gatekeep as to whether or not they, should have those things. And we try to be fair on those. I think there are some customers that should have more security protections that won't pay for it. And I know that there are some that are willing to pay for it that probably don't need it as much. Not that there's zero benefit. Of course there's benefit. But that they're a lower risk than other companies. And so it's such a dance, because this is what frustrates me, because what ends up happening is this ends up discrediting what I tell clients. This is single-handedly discredited, not maybe impacting dangerously, but this will come back. There will be a time where I'm sitting in front of a prospect or even a current client talking to them about security. You go, yeah, but wasn't that just a hoax? Aren't you just using fear? And there's a difference between fear and consequence. And I try to walk the tight line of saying, listen, like, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to prevent. This is how this plays in. The consequence of is this.
Yeah. The scary part to me, realistically, though, and what people should consider is more so that's how the dark web works. Like, that's how people selling passwords and data works. They're going to pull together a bunch of old leaks, sift through it, maybe look at it with AI and trying to find,
but then sell it for $20.
Yeah. And then, it's dirt cheap. This will be interesting to see if it goes past the current news cycle or how that'll work media wise. But I think largely, I even just Googled it. I think largely a lot of people are like discrediting it right now. But yeah, don't discredit the national public data breach, though, that happened last year with the...
That was a thing that was validated, and that came up on our radar because our providers, our sources, validated that.
Yeah, but that one was $3 billion, and at that time that was the biggest, and I still think that is the biggest.
I still think it is the single biggest.
Yeah, $3 billion is
This
massive.
is just 16 billion credentials that could be duplicates, but are over the course of 30 different database dumps.
Yeah,
which themselves could be database dumps. Just kind of a frustrating thing of like, here we go. Everybody is losing their mind and freaking out because 16 billion passed. And why? It's because somebody was dishonest.
Yeah, got to sniff out the fake news. Well, that's largely it. A lot of cool stuff, though. I'm going to go make a PNG.
Hope you do. Now, the question is will you use lowercase typeface with that?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Well, we figure that out and probably handle the next 2 weeks getting hate mail from GIF supporters.
Dude, bring it on.
Crunchy or not, man, bring it.
It's crunchy for sure.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you for standing up. I am so tired of being one of the only people who likes crunchy peanut butter.
I would go as far to say as I like extra crunchy, but...
No, I do. Now you do. The only thing with extra crunchy is you can't do a peanut butter sandwich just extra crunchy. It's too thick. It's too Mr. Ed.
That's why you would use a ludicrous amount of jelly.
That was where I was going. Or a little bit of honey. But something that kind of goes in there.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. Extra crunchy. That's my jam.
Wait, no, it's not.
Wait, that's my peanut butter.
It's my jelly.
That's my Jif.
Oh, gosh.
I hope you enjoy your time. That's going to do it for this episode of the Lighthouse IT Solutions Podcast. On behalf of Griff, I've been Matt. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out the hub at hub.lighthousesol.com. When you go there, you'll find all kinds of blog articles. You'll also find links to previous podcast episodes as well as show notes that we have for today. You get to see some links for our Lighthouse Lab series, which is also available on the YouTubes. YouTube is not just cats anymore. It's cats and the Lighthouse Labs.
I thought those cats had cheeseburgers.
They can have the cheeseburgers. It doesn't mean that they have the cheeseburgers.
Oh.
So in the meantime, while we go figure out all of that, we'll leave it to it. Stay safe. Catch you on the next episode of the Lighthouse IT Solutions Podcast.